Welcome to Unlearning with Laura, the podcast where you get to rewire your mind, reclaim your power, and break generational cycles. I'm Laura Stiles, clinical hypnotherapist and mindset coach, and founder of The Mindful Generation, the place where parents come to transform their lives and live with more purpose and freedom. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Mother Cup of Tea, a gorgeous range of herbal blends designed to support women's hormone health, energy and well-being. Honestly, they are like a hug in a cup. You can grab 25% off their wellness collection using the discount link in the show notes and the code MINDFUL25. Before we dive in, just a gentle reminder, if you're enjoying the podcast, please hit follow, like, subscribe or share it with a friend. It makes such a huge difference for a small business owner like me, and it helps this podcast to reach more mums who need it. Today's guest is Laetitia Felix. Laetitia is a fertility and pregnancy loss coach and a mind-body practitioner, supporting women through unexplained infertility, pregnancy loss and beyond. She's a mum of one, having conceived naturally at 40 after a 4-year journey through multiple losses. Laetitia blends somatic, energetic and mindset-based therapies to help women regulate their nervous system, release inner blocks and rewire mind and body, boosting fertility while bringing clarity, calm, empowerment and trust to their journey. Let's dive in. Welcome, Laetitia, to the podcast. I am so happy that you are here today. So me and Laetitia are good friends. We voice note most days of the week. We met on our mindset coaching certification a good few years ago now. And yeah, it's really lovely to have you on because it's been a long time coming. And, you know, I mentioned we talk a lot about our own personal lives and we kind of coach each other through our own, day-to-day things. So it's really lovely to have you on, Laetitia.
Oh, hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I'm so excited. I know it feels like our normal chats, but thank you for having me. Yeah, we are definitely coaching and supporting and being with each other's in each other's lives since maybe 3-4 years. I can't remember now. I lost count. But yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, it's so nice to have you on. So obviously we know what you do and so much of what you do kind of like intertwines into a lot of our lives because there's probably going to be listeners that are on a fertility journey. So they're perhaps trying to conceive or even thinking about conceiving and maybe they're not quite in the kind of thick of that journey just yet. And then there's going to be others who are perhaps even, they've had children, they've finished that journey. They may have, things that they need to process like birth trauma, or they may have experienced loss. And there also might be women who are into the perimenopause kind of phase of life. So I feel like this episode could benefit all sorts of women, and there's so much I want to ask you, but we're going to try and stick to my notes here and try and keep it brief, because I think that if we stick to that, we can really dive into those kind of things that we've talked about. So I will start off by asking you if you could just walk us through your approach and how you bring together the mindset, the somatic and the spiritual practices to support women.
Yeah. So thank you for the introduction. And yes, so it is true. I originally just talked about unexplained infertility, which is my niche. But as I started to coach women and support them through their journey, it is true that it's kind of expanded. So I do just explain again. Yeah, I support women going through the ones that haven't got any medical, I suppose, diagnosis or like specific issues that's stopping them from conceiving. I support them, but also so I basically help them with the missing piece of the unexplained diagnosis. But there's a lot of women, unfortunately, like myself, that have gone through losses. So I support women healing from losses. Also the ones that are going through IVF or any other medical supports and need to or want to, I suppose, align and prepare their mental and emotional side of it, and really create like the best environment in order for the pregnancy to hold. But also, as you mentioned, with the time, there's a lot more, there's moms now that actually want to heal from birth trauma. We can talk about that later, and losses. Yeah, so that's what I do. And basically, going through my own journey, as you know, it's taken me 4 years to conceive my lovely daughter. And I was about to turn 40 when I had her, literally 2 months before I turned 40. And the reason why I'm doing that now is because I came to the conclusion that although I was doing everything on a physical level, preparing as we told to, and it's valid and it's important, we told to prepare our body, to nourish it, to detoxify it, to just do all on the physical side, or taking the medication if you need to. I suppose vitamins, but if you need to do the medical side, so this whole medical journey that you need to go through if you have to go on the IVF or anything else. But despite doing all the right things at the time, it was not happening for me. And I went through 4 losses before. And literally all the medical tests were coming back like, well, they're not all good, because they were saying that my eggs were actually getting lower because I was turning 40 soon. And there was a lot of component that was not optimal. But on the other side, I was followed by naturopath. My hormones were now on the right level, but yet nothing was happening. And it's only when I went through my own healing journey and I realized that actually, we look at the physical side, but what about the mental and emotional side? What about our nervous system? What about it's like it could be half of our health that we actually not looking at. So my approach is to align all of it. Basically, we looking at, we are mindset coaches, both of us. So, but it's not just that, it's just, I'm looking at the nervous system. I'm looking at, when I'm talking about the mindset, I'm talking about what is it that shapes you today? What is it that, like your emotions, your belief system, whether that is conscious or subconscious? And because we know a lot of things that we've been told by society, for example, myself included, when I was going past 35, time is rolling. That's all you hear. Time is running out. Like, I'm getting old.
Geriatric. I hate the word geriatric mother as well.
Oh, yeah. Your eggs are getting like too old or not good quality. It's like a society thing. So whether that is from that, whether that is from childhood, we have sometimes belief system that is stuck in our subconscious that it's stopping us from actually. And what happens is that then this is showing how we are showing. It's going to influence how we're showing up in life, how we react to things, how we are going to perceive things. So it's almost like going to be like kind of a self-sabotage. So that, to me, the mindset. And it also reflects how we react to our habits in our daily life. So all of that is, to me, that's where I put under the mindset thing. Also, for me, the energetic is something that I've really worked on myself, because as we know, the body keeps score. And when we've been through some difficult journey and involving emotional, not necessarily, we call it emotional trauma, but just emotional imprints, meaning like, you go through so many things and your body holds the emotions, it's all having a knock-on effect onto how your body's not feeling safe enough to conceive. So for me, what I do is I combine the mindset work, I combine the energetic work. So I do energy healing, and the whole emotional, obviously, side of it, which is also part of the mindset, but the whole emotional healing. And that is, in a nutshell, something to prepare the body to be in the right, best environment. And that alongside, obviously, I expect, and I would talk to my client about looking at the physical side, which is all the nutrition and everything, although that's not my specialty. That's, it's almost coming hand in hand. But that is how I combine it all. And my packages, my programs I run, whether that is for losses or conception, goes through all those elements, the mindset, the emotional side, the energy side. And, to me, it's almost like, if you don't prepare your body in the right environment, and your body is like, it's like a plant in the soil, right? If it's not actually feeling safe or nourished enough, and the potential might be there, but the environment is not ready. So for me, that's what I do, prepare it all to optimize your body and your fertility. That makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was a long answer.
No, it's a great answer though, because there's so much to take into account, isn't there? There's, like you said, so many facets and aspects, and you just touching there upon just things like processing emotions. We really do hold on to trauma at a cellular level, and if we have perhaps had a difficult childhood, or if there's been major trauma, like for example sexual abuse or something like that, these kinds of things are going to have a huge effect on fertility. And not for everyone, but it can do it. Our bodies can really be holding on to a lot of pain, and I really truly believe that a holistic approach is the best approach. And Things like environment as well. I know something that I was really kind of careful of when I was trying to conceive was little things in the house like toxic candles and, things that we consume or that we can put on our skin and that can be endocrine disruptors and that kind of thing. I remember learning about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think as much as, I've just said a lot of things, but generally I feel like less is more when it comes to conception. And what I mean by that is that one of the key things I also do with my clients is that I teach them to go back into the inner wisdom, meaning the inner knowing. Why? Because we are bombarded by things to do. And yes, there is the basic and I suppose the groundwork that needs to be done, as you said, about what it will disrupt your hormones, what is toxic in your house, or what food to give your body. I'm teaching them on the side, what are your thoughts? What is your belief system? How to regulate your nervous system. It's key to me, but also how to know what's right for you and what's not, because you might not need to do every single thing in the world that needs, I used to do so much. I think I'm very much of a perfectionist. So when I was going through my journey and the doctors were saying it's unexplained, I was like, well, that's not an answer for me. Thank you very much. I need an answer.
Yeah.
So I went through rabbit holes, like so many different ways of which vitamins, which drops do I need to take, which, and it's not saying that it won't work for you, but you don't need to try every single thing. I think going back to what is right for you, and that comes back to, for me, connect to your mind-body connection, because we have the answers within us. We know what's right for us, what's not right. We might not know it all the time, but like when we come to a decision and shall we take that route or should I take that route? That's what I also did with IVF, and not because I'm against IVF at all, but despite all the doctors bombarding me saying, this is what you need to do, because there's no other answers. You can't get pregnant and you're turning 40. Therefore, that's what you need to do. I explored that route. But thankfully, I think that was kind of my turning point where I decided that, okay, what does my inner guts, what does my inner knowing tells me at that point? And it was really giving me all the no answers. And I didn't know why at the time. I didn't know why I don't think I was meant to go that route. I was meant to do it naturally. And again, that's different to every woman, but it's doing less is more. And it's not about dysregulating or making it more stressed. It's about bringing safety, calm, and regulating the nervous system. So yeah.
Absolutely. And just when you were speaking there, I remembered I had a really good conversation on this podcast with Jenna Holloway, because she had a tricky fertility journey and she had twins. And eventually, I think she just literally let the universe decide. She was like, I am going to accept that this is my fate. This is too difficult. And I think she just accepted that maybe it wasn't going to happen. And then it happened for her, because I think at the time she was reading like spiritual kind of books, and she started reading about energetics, and then I guess her mindset changed, because she was probably feeling happier. I think she was explaining like, yeah, life just felt better and she was happier and she was fully present again and she stopped worrying, and then it happened. And I guess that's probably quite common as well, isn't it? I guess it's that mindset and that nervous safety.
I think it sounds easy, but it's one of the most difficult things to do. And surrendering, trusting is what I came to do, but it took me a lot of inner work to do that. And I do teach the woman I support on that. It's not overnight shift. It takes mindset work. It takes understanding. It's about going from that fear, because we are fear driven, and that's what it is. When I talk about nervous system and all of that, yeah, it sounds like, but basically we are scared. We're scared time is running out. We're scared we're going to have another loss. We're scared we might never going to become a mom. We are just living on fear all the time, and we're not living in the present, because we are just scared of what's going to not happen, or we think might not happen. So I think, yeah, definitely grounding, going back to the present, changing the mindset. But it's possible. I've done that. I've definitely done that. And I know one of my recent clients was completely like overwhelmed, and overwhelm is a big thing as well, which is all linked to each other, isn't it? But it's something we go through. And she was very perfectionist, was trying everything. She was not recognizing herself, basically, because she didn't feel positive anymore. She felt all the time anxious. She was just kept on trying the next different fix she could find. after working with her, I mean, she's actually taken a break and a holiday, which she hasn't taken for like 2 or 3 years, because she was like, well, we can't, because if we take holiday on that day, like that's when we are, maybe that's not going to fix with, the time we need to conceive, or like, that window in the month or whatever. Like, I can't drink alcohol, and your whole life revolves around it, right? She decided to literally take a break and be like, I just want to become myself again.
Yeah.
I want to be like that person that was before. So yeah, it's not just about, oh, you can just become that next day, but it is possible to change. We're not talking about going from like fear driven to completely positive all the time. That's not possible. But we can shift our mindset. We can shift how we react to certain things, the pregnancy announcement, the period coming every month. We can pick ourselves up better when we actually work on our mindset and live more in the present. And yeah, so
that is such a big one. I was going to say earlier, the fear, it really can be all consuming, especially when it comes to trying to conceive. So can you tell us a bit more about your experience working with baby spirits? I'm very interested in the baby spirits and how that shows up for women that you support.
Yeah, I love baby spirits. I mean, this is something I've recently added to my programs. Why? Because it's something I really deeply believe in. This is, for me, something I've experienced, thankfully, when I work. It's kind of given me that hope and that understanding that it's so much bigger than us as well. I mean, yes, we can do as much as we can. At the end of the day, we will never know when we are going to become a mom. But we're also talking about timing. Yes, timing, but not just timing of us. It's on a spiritual level, we are souls, right, living this journey, but it's also the soul of the baby coming into our life to become alive and to live this life. So when we talk about timing, it involves partners, ourselves, and that baby. And I now work with women to connect with the baby spirit, and it's something I will actually do more training on next year, because I really love that. So how I came about doing that is, after, I think it was my third loss on my journey, I just heard of baby spirit communication, and I was like, okay, let's try. I've always been very spiritual. This is not new, but I didn't know how that would work. So I did. I think I bought the book, or I bought the book after. So I saw someone that was baby spirit communicator, and I wanted some answers, some understanding of why I keep having those losses. Is there something more that I need to know? And by having this conversation, basically, this woman went into contact with the souls of the baby that I had lost. And the reality of it was that it wasn't always my daughter coming into those pregnancies. She came a couple of times, and apparently I wasn't ready. So it's very interesting. The baby spirit communicator was saying that she was actually describing my daughter's personality, the signs she would send me when I was here, how to communicate with her. She advised me on that book. I'm trying to figure out where it is here. It's actually in the other room, but I can give you the name.
Yeah,
you know.
Let me know after, and I'll pop the link in the show notes.
I mean, there's loads now, but at the time I started with that. So basically, in a nutshell, she was saying that I wasn't yet spiritually ready, physically and spiritually, and I needed more time to grow. So that was the answer, and she would come back. And the other losses were just never meant to be born, which is very, as a person who has experienced multiple losses, and how painful physically and emotionally it is to lose a baby, I find that having that answer, knowing that there's nothing you could have done, nothing you did wrong, that baby was simply there to help me grow. I mean, knowing my journey now, I understand better. And I'm not saying that everyone's journey is different. There's going to be different reasons for every woman. For me specifically, that led me to where I am today as well, supporting other women. So whether I had to understand what it was to have a, pregnancy loss, or whether I had to do also my healing journey in order to understand this is a holistic process, I had to do so much growing and healing, that understanding that those babies were never meant to be born, they were just, their purpose was just to help me grow, was a massive help for me and a massive closure in terms of those losses. I've actually experienced a recent loss this year, which and which I've started to talk about. And I also understood that that baby wasn't meant to be born and is a different one. That's a different soul. And since then, obviously, after having that reading, I started to go into connection with my daughter at the time. And I spoke to it before, I think, on a different podcast. But for your readers, I thought that was quite interesting that I would go always on that meditation, basically. And I would meet with, sometimes I wouldn't see her physically, but I would feel her presence. And I knew for a fact it was a girl. I always knew. And when I was going on those meditation, I was going to like kind of a safe space. And I would always go to the same spot. It would be like a swing, there's a green space. I could really like visualize it and always feel really good there. And I would call her in at that point, and we would just spend time talking. And I was just like feeling her love from even before she was born. And I know that sounds very like woohoo, but that is real. But fast forward when I had my daughter, she was about 2 or 3. I think I told you that story, but like, I don't remember if you know that story.
Did, yeah.
She was 3. I mean, she was old enough to speak and to be like aware of things. She was at nursery, and randomly, because I think she's very open, at that point, and when they're young, they don't have that same veil that we have. They can see spirits, they can see things, they're very much more aware of things. And she said to me randomly at the table, "Mommy, you remember when we used to go on that swing with my little brother?" And at the time when I was doing the meditation, it was always a little boy as well. I was always believed I'd have 2 children. And I said, "What do you mean you had a nursery?" Like, "No, not the nursery." And she kept on going and describing me the exact spot where we would go, describing how it was when we would go on meditation. And I said, "Was Daddy there?" I was trying to trick her to understand. I said, "Was because he wasn't there in my meditation."
Yeah.
I said, "Was Daddy there?" "No, Mommy, you remember that was a dream. It was just me, you and brother. We were on the swing and we would do that." So at that point, if that's not true, I don't know what is. You know what I mean? So
I love that because I do remember you telling me that at the time, and I remember having goosebumps thinking there's no other way that children know that stuff. Like,
no.
I feel like it's proof that they're so much more in tune with source, or however you want to word it or describe it, and whatever your beliefs are. I just feel children are so in tune, they're so good at channeling, and that just is such a beautiful story.
Yeah, and I feel so from that point, she gave me, and I think that's why I teach. I mean, I'm not a medium by any means. That's not what I'm saying, but I do know how to connect to baby spirit a bit more, and I want to do a lot more training. And that's why I encourage if they're open to it, you don't have to, but if you are open to it, and I haven't met a woman that wasn't yet, I help them also get when I say closure, that doesn't mean I close the door, meaning like, because having a loss and closing the door, it's painful. But what I mean by closure, and say what you have to say, be in contact with that baby spirit, and maybe say what you wish you could have said. And I know you could say it in any way, but sometimes when you are with someone and that person is guiding you, I think it just gives that extra comfort. And so I do help with that, and I do meditation and guiding them, whether that is on a session or if they prefer it in their home time, to connect with that baby. And the baby soul is around us sometimes a lot longer before they're actually born, sometimes years before. So I think that's fascinating. And they have ways to come to us and send us signs, whether it's by dreams, whether it's through specific animals. That's usually it's things that are very cheerful, but also things that mean something to us.
Yeah.
Whether there is a specific sign, whether it's specific place, colors. But eventually when you build that connection, it's about the same way like we build that inner knowing, that muscle inside us almost with that gut. Okay, that's a different thing, but it's almost the same thing in the sense that when we build that connection with the baby's soul, with the baby spirit, it's like you get more and more aware of their presence when they're coming around you or in your dreams, or if you feel a sensation. So it's building that connection way before. And I think that's for me, I think it's very reassuring and
comforting as well. Yeah. Oh, it's lovely, isn't it, to think that it's not just like you're living your life and there's zero connection to that new soul that's going to come to you. It feels comforting knowing that they may already be a part of your life, but you just don't know it yet. And it's, a lovely way to connect with them. And I think that's beautiful. Oh, I feel like I could ask more about that, but just aware of the time. So Yeah, honestly, and I
Very
also,
classy, everyone.
oh no, it's lovely. No, no, it's great because yeah, there's a lot to talk about with these questions because they're big questions, and also people might be listening and thinking that doesn't sound like it's for me or it sounds too woo woo, and that's absolutely fine. We're both quite spiritual people, but I feel like it is just nice to know that if you can be a little bit open minded, having that kind of, I don't know, inner wisdom and trusting your gut and just knowing that there's often other things available to you that might really support you that are not just black and
Yeah.
white that you can see with your own eyes. Yeah, kind of diving into those and reconnecting with those senses as well, because we have more senses than the five senses that we think we have, well, that we know we have. Another good book actually is just when you were talking about signs, Dr. Tara Swart wrote a book this year all about signs. And so that's probably another thing that might help people if they're kind of interested in that side of things. So let's talk about healing from birth trauma, because we had a session, it must have been about 2 or 3 years ago now, when I realised that I had actually been kind of holding on to some pain, and there was an energetic block for me in my womb space because I had some birth trauma from my firstborn. Had a really long, drawn out birth with him. It had some growth scans. He wasn't growing. I had an early induction, and it was all very, very long winded. And at the time, I thought I handled it really well, but then I didn't realize that I actually was holding on to trauma until, all these years later. And so when I started talking to you about that, I remember you were looking for people to practice your EFT tapping with, because you are quite an advanced level practitioner, and you really helped me. We did some sessions and you really, really helped me to process the birth trauma that I was holding on to with my eldest. And what I loved about that session that you did with me, I think we did 2 or 3 sessions, but one of them I really remember thinking, oh my God, she knows her shit and she's really good with her intuition. Like, she's so intuitive, because you sort of had this really clever way of almost like knowing what I was thinking, because I remember having a real release, and you got me to do a visualization and go back and be next to the version of me who had just given birth, who was still laying on the bed. I had no feeling in my legs. And I really remember going back to her and speaking to her and giving her words of comfort and giving her a hug. And oh my God, that visualization for me really stood out. And I remember thinking that's what I needed. And I had a really big cry. And as I said before we were recording, I was telling my good friend about this on Saturday, who's a midwife, and we were both in tears talking about it at dinner, because both of us have experienced tricky births. And honestly, your work is amazing. So whether you are on a fertility journey or not, or if you've had a baby and you have experienced a really difficult birth or a loss, and it's not about conception for you right now, this is something that I can highly recommend and speak highly of, because I've had the experience of working with you with this. So let's just dive into like birth trauma, past pregnancy losses, and how they impact women even after they've become mums. Talk a little bit about your work with that, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it's as I said earlier, at the first start of the start of the program, I I was focusing on conception to start with, and then pregnancy, because I had women coming to me, and it's funny how the universe sends you sometimes what you're supposed to be looking at as well. I had a few clients coming to me, so there's different things, okay, but I'm just gonna try to be clear on how I support. But how it started for me was that I had a few women coming to me pregnant, but completely unable to either regulate, feel calm, feel safe in their pregnancy, or connect with their baby during the pregnancy. And the reason being was either they've experienced loss, which was very triggering for them, because then they're like, their body is not feeling safe, of course, because your mind is thinking it's going to happen again. But I had a couple originally that come to me and were like, it's because of my birth trauma, the trauma of the birth. I'm completely terrified to to give birth again. And that's what really got me to start working on that and add that to my offers. Because I think as women, so many of us going through birth trauma, and it sticks with us, right? So it could be either, so those specific, that's how it started basically. That woman that I can remember very well, the first one, she couldn't connect to her baby, like what I've just said basically. And bless her, her birth was very horrendous. And of course, she didn't want to visualize or even put herself into the position of giving birth again, because she was actually worried about the safety of her baby and herself. This is how bad the first one came. So we did a lot of healing. And can I just say, yeah, when you mentioned EFT, I think people undermine the powerful technique that it is, the same way as you do hypnotherapy, which is amazing. And I do some hypnosis as well, not at your level, but I do hypnosis in my offering. But EFT as well, I mean, it's getting the benefit of having that talking psychotherapy, because you're talking out loud and you're not always voicing out. Let's be honest, we're not talking out loud about what we've been through, whether that is through any kind of trauma, but also the benefit of having the acupressure, the acupuncture without the needle. And also the EFT kinds of connect to your subconscious. Not kind of, it completely connects to your subconscious, and it retrieves the information that you might not consciously aware of. But what the technique that you mentioned is actually what we call the inner child healing. So what we do is we go back to that version of you that after the event, obviously not in the middle of it, but after that trauma, when you were maybe at home, as you said, sitting on your bed, or in a hospital corridor waiting after something happened. And we really like going through what she was feeling at the time. And yeah, you can do it with yourself now, but going through that visualization and putting yourself in a shoe, sitting or standing next to that younger version of you. And that might be 6 months ago, that could be when you were 6 years old for another type of trauma. But in terms of like birth trauma or anything, it's like, it's got that extra power, isn't it? Because you are giving them the information she wants to hear. You are telling her what you would have wanted to hear at the time, but you're also tapping on her, or she's tapping, obviously. So when I work with that client to come back to her, by doing that healing with her and going through that emotional trauma from the birth, she actually didn't have any more triggers. She didn't have any more, because her body was not holding on to that weight anymore. She could look back at the birth. She didn't forget that. It's not about forgetting, but the emotion load he was not attached to it anymore. And long story short, she actually gave birth at home with a doula. She completely changed, transformed. And I think once I had that, I was like, oh my God, I need to do more of that as well. I know there's loads that you can do with women and conception journey, but I think it's almost like, speaking to a lot of my friends, and you included, but also women that have gone through on becoming moms and had a difficult journey getting there. The amount of women that I speak to that are still triggered or still teary, still like replaying in their mind in a loop the experience of having a miscarriage, a loss, or a birth trauma it's a lot of women. It's almost like I meet them a lot, and they're still triggered. How it looks like is that you are still triggered while you are in your daily life. You're still crying. It's normal to not forget and be like, it's in your heart and you're not going to forget, and you are grieving. But when you are still triggered by it, you're still crying, you're still having nightmares over it. It's almost like you're having PTSD. That is not normal. I'd say it's not normal. It doesn't mean not normal. It's completely valid. It's completely understanding. But what I mean by not normal, it's not normal that we should carry that and live with that.
Yeah.
There's no time to heal. And I think it's still possible to heal after. So yeah, my work is to help that as well, and support emotionally and energetically as well, because a lot of the things that we carry is in our womb, or our places in our body, but sometimes in our womb. And when I talk to friends, not clients, but friends that have triggers through from past miscarriages, losses, or birth trauma, it's funny that we always know a woman, isn't it? But it works out that I know a lot of them, and they never even thought of healing that part of them, because they're like, well, now I have a child or two, they have a family. Some women actually, I should be grateful, because some women haven't got what I've got, and I just need to put up with it. That's what life is about. And I disagree with that. And I think like we carry sometimes shame or guilt that we've been through that, and we're feeling still that way. and because we have a child, it could be that, or it could be that we don't have time, like, because we are a mom and things like that. But it has a knock-on effect onto our well-being and to our parenting. And it's not shame at all. I think it's about honoring our story, but at the same time, what can we heal it if we can? Sorry, does that answer your?
So much I could unpick just with that answer, because there's so much that we can do to help ourselves. But what frustrates me is that if it was men who were the ones having babies, I feel like all of this support would be free on the NHS, and you wouldn't even. I just feel like we are just left to have babies in usually not a very humane way. We do it in such a horrible kind of like, the patriarchy came up with this way to give birth that isn't even a natural position to be in. I mean, there's so much I can talk about just the birth process, but I won't go into that today. And then we're kind of left to our own devices afterwards. You don't really get support. And there's, like you said, so many women, and I speak to a lot of mothers who have had a difficult time, whether it was the birth trauma or whether it was the time afterwards, that kind of period of matrescence after having the baby, of just like feeling unsupported or having to go back to work too soon or getting made redundant and feeling unsafe in their nervous system because they're just in survival mode. So much can be said on this. So yeah, I thank you for just describing like how much we have to put up with, but also like what we hold on to in our bodies. And another thing that I could probably talk about for another hour is like the womb healing, because I did go on a bit of a journey with that, and I know this is something that you know quite a bit about. And womb healing is a big one, and I think people again probably think, oh, that sounds a bit woo woo and it sounds a little bit out there for me. But I went on this retreat about a year ago, and I realised afterwards there was so much I was holding on to in my womb space. I went on a bit of a womb healing journey, and it was really powerful because I think there was a lot of trauma being held within my womb. And there's that interesting fact about how when your mum was pregnant with you, your eggs were already inside her womb, and she was inside your grandma at the time. So I always find that really mind-blowing, because I think that we hold on to any kind of ancestral trauma that's like within our mothers and grandmothers, and it kind of goes down that lineage. And so I went on a massive, like, fascinating journey with that. And I was doing this kind of like meditation, like womb healing every day for about a month, because not only that I had my own like birth trauma with my eldest, I think I also had a traumatic birth. My mum said that I came out in a very awkward position, but also I really completely lost my libido when I was a new mum. And I think that's common and normal anyway, because you're kind of sleep deprived and hormones and all the rest of it. But it took a long time for that to kind of return to normal. And I think it was mostly down to the birth trauma with my eldest. So yeah, I just all fascinating stuff. And
it's fascinating. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I feel like it's not talked enough. I feel like, and what I wanted to say, I can relate to the womb healing, because when I went through, I didn't realize, basically, I went through a womb healing session myself. And it's funny you said that, because she took me on a meditation with my ancestors, woman. So my mom, grandma, and we went through a whole healing through the old ancestral line. Sorry, I can't even say the word. And that was powerful. But also what I realized by doing that womb healing, that was after conceiving my daughter, by the way. And that was me trying, on the second conception journey for a second child. I realized that she told me she did energy healing, but it was all around the womb. I was holding on to, what was it, shame and guilt, because I felt awful. So basically, the birth I've had was not what I, as many women, is not what I really hoped for at all. Like, in fact, the complete opposite. Was all about natural. I did hypnobirthing. I wanted a pool. I wanted all of that. And I know they tell us don't expect it to all go as planned. But the fact that I was drugged so much, it took me 3 days, and I'm just not for medication personally if I can avoid it. It went from natural, ideal birth in my mind to being taken in emergency C-section. It was just awful. I mean, it's not, my daughter was safe and I was safe. But as I want to say as well is that I felt guilty for giving my daughters first hours of life and going through that kind of traumatic for the baby as well, being taken out that way. And so the person that was doing the womb healing, it told me that, it's so funny really that I remember, she told me that, she made me realize what I was feeling. And the minute I put my finger on it, I didn't realize all these years, it was about like 4 years before, that I was holding on to the grief and to the guilt. And she said, "Why are you guilty of?" And because I read so many things about C-section, and I just felt guilty for my daughter. I didn't want to give her that start of life. And the minute she put the finger on it and we talked about it, I burst into tears. Like, it's almost like it was such a big release. And that made me realize, oh my God, how important it is to, sometimes we say birth trauma and we feel like, well, this, I visualize a birth in a pool and everything. Some women sometimes think, well, birth is not easy. It's not meant to be easy. It depends what you've been told, what you've been perceived to have. But sometimes if you hold on to the emotional things that happen, and it doesn't, what I'm trying to say is that birth trauma doesn't have to be traumatic per se, as it finish in like a really horrendous story. Sometimes we go through things that disappoint us, bring emotional trigger, or just like disappointment, shame, guilt, whatever, and we're holding on to it in our body. So then I went through my own birth healing as well. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, because we might put a label on birth trauma and say it has to be completely horrendous and finishing. But sometimes it's just, as long as we're holding on, this is how we perceive it to be. Do you know what I mean? Trauma doesn't have to be a certain way. I perceive it to be like not good for my daughter on a health reason or whatever. And therefore I was holding on to it. Therefore it is some kind of trauma. And I had to heal from it and release it. And yes, it was in my womb area. So yeah.
So
I just thought it was important to mention that sometimes we are undermining what impact it has on us. And I think healing is never too late, as I said. I'm going to do a training a bit more, in depth around birth trauma. But I heard that, and I've read a lot of things on it, and I've just read about studies that women that have suffered trauma are sometimes at risk to have increased fear and anxiety around their child's health or their parenting abilities, not feeling they're good enough on a subconscious level. And it's not something that we should really be scared of. But I think all to say that healing that side of us has a knock-on effect on our parenting and on our, actually, like there's a woman that I've done it on, and something else I want to say, she healed the birth with her child that, didn't go as she planned, and she was holding on a lot of emotions. After doing that healing session, her child came to her and hugged her for the first time in ever, because he was not the type of hugger or telling her he loves her. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. It actually has a knock-on effect also on the child's attitude and relationship you have with them. It's fascinating, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. It does, because I say this a lot to my clients. Once we feel nervous system safety and we have a release and we've processed something, and even if you're just living in that kind of day-to-day stress, anxiety, survival mode because you're being, you're a busy parent juggling everything and you're used to feeling stressed and you've been like it for like 3 years, for example, our children they just sense it, don't they? And so, yeah, as soon as you have worked through some of your nervous system stuff that may relay and come from your own childhood conditioning, they really do. You will notice it in their behavior. And that's why, yeah, in some of the work I do, you often notice that when you do your own healing, listening to hypnotherapy and healing your own kind of, whether it's trauma or whether it's just like limiting beliefs and habits and things and fears, often you will find your child's behavior overnight can be much better because they feel it. Because if your nervous system is safe and you're feeling calm most days and you're regulated, then they sense it and they act accordingly, because it's like a mirror, isn't it? So
I mean, we know that on a parenting level for different things, isn't it? We are a mirror to them.
yeah.
And I think it shifts our energy when we heal ourselves. It shifts our presence. It shifts our belief system as well. Because for me, I felt so different in my parenting after, without even intentionally, sorry, I should say, doing that healing. It wasn't the reason why, but when I realized how much guilt I was having towards my daughter, I think it's fascinating, but it's very important and not talked enough, as I said. Be able to look back, I've done so much healing on myself, even for my mom when she passed away, be able to look back at certain events without feeling all the emotionals, triggers and things. That's why it's called emotional freedom. I mean, there are different ways of doing that, by the way, but I'm talking about EFT. But when we talk about emotional freedom technique, it gives you that freedom, right? It gives you that
Yeah.
to breathe and to be like, oh my gosh, I don't
Yeah.
need to do this anymore. It's
Yeah.
tough. So yeah, honor it, but it's time to let it go, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of almost eradicate the difficult emotion that was attached to that memory, that's what it's all about. And that's why it's so fabulous, isn't it? I love EFT. I'm going to ask you one final question. What would you say to first time pregnant you to support her?
First thing I would say to the there's two sides of like my answers as usual, only because I could say the first pregnant me before I had the loss. So sorry, when it was about to become a loss, so that before I had my daughter, to that version of me, I'm just gonna reassure her and say this is all part of your journey. Do not give up. You are meant to become a mom and it will happen. And trust your inner guts, trust your, this is all part, because I feel like when we are going through a loss, and let alone I was going to have another three, all we want to know is that it's going to happen, right? We are okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say that to her, but to that version of me that is pregnant of my daughter, I want to tell her that, first of all, you and your baby are safe. Okay. You are going to be fine, because that's a big thing to know when you're pregnant and be, oh my God, is she going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And you're going to have a beautiful relationship like you did with your mom. It's actually almost going to bring me tears. I'm sorry.
I'm already crying.
Because that was what I needed to know, because I don't have my mom as a mom and it's very difficult. But I want to tell her that you're gonna have that beautiful relationship with your daughter that you had with your mom. And you don't have to be a perfect mom, okay? Let go of that weight that you are putting yourself. You're the only one that putting yourself into those perfect standards. Ask for I wish I could say to her, ask for support. You don't have to do it all alone. It's okay to ask for support. It doesn't make you a bad mom, and someday you're gonna be doing amazing, and someday you are gonna feel like it's all falling apart. But it's just part of the journey. You're not failing. You are just a human being. So
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad I've got my tissues on my desk today.
oh my God.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Like, yeah, let's take a moment to just honestly, beautiful words, but also anyone who's listening who also might want to just do that as like a mini practice if you have been going through loss, or if you feel like this would support you. I suppose I could invite you to do the same. Like, what would you say to first time pregnant you if you have been through a similar journey to Laetitia? Because I think that's really beautiful. And thank you for your openness and honesty and vulnerability, because no one tells you how tough the journey is trying to conceive or have a baby when you've been through your own big loss yourself. I haven't experienced that myself. And so, yeah, just you talking about your mum there at the end, I feel like is a really important one to also acknowledge, because I think that that's a big one for a lot of people. But also, thank you so much, Laetitia, because your words of wholesomeness and love and wisdom all around fertility and conception, and everything you know about the nervous system and mindset and the spirituality kind of side of it, I just think is wonderful, because it brings it all together, as we said at the beginning, in a holistic way. It's a really beautiful journey to go on if you do have things to process, or if you are going through that conception journey. Honestly, Laetitia is your girl, so get in touch with her. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I've got my Instagram. It's mindset_body and soul, and my website is mindsetbodyandsoul.com. And yeah, you can DM me, message me, go on the website. I've got also on my website, I've got a lot of my articles. I do regular magazine articles, of previous podcasts if they're interested in knowing more about what I'll talk about. But thank you for having me as well. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because I think when women help other women, it makes it a better place. So thank you for all you do with your podcast and your work as well, because it's all very precious.
Oh, thank you. You also have, sorry, you just mentioned there the free meditation on your website, but you've got some great bundles as well, haven't you? Is this the same thing, or is this slightly different?
No, I do offer free meditation on my website. There's a free actually EFT video coming up soon. So watch out in the next few weeks. And that's around overwhelm. And probably more towards women that are actually on the conception journey and feeling overwhelmed and need to understand sometime what is EFT about, and before they even book a session. My programs are around, I do 10 weeks program for conception. I do a 6 weeks specifically around losses and healing. I also do a bundle around pregnancy. So for women that are pregnant and want to heal after birth trauma or losses, and feel safer and connect with the baby. So that's a bundle. And in terms of like anyone else that want to heal from past miscarriages, and they might not be on their conception journey, but they want to heal from past losses or birth trauma, I offer bundles of EFT sessions. And some people want energy healing, so I'm happy to also sometimes, create something specific. But I tend to have bundle of EFT or angelic Reiki, which is what I do as well.
Yeah, lovely. Oh, thank you so much. It's been lovely to have you on, and we will wrap it up there. So thank you, Laetitia. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.